So we're working on Descartes' first meditation. We talked about the meaning of the first paragraph. We've talked about his analysis of sense experience. We've talked about his analysis of the broader notion of sense experience, that is not something in sense experience, but just the fact that I'm here. And we saw he could reject that because of dreams. That is to say, sometimes I dream something that is not at all true, and I take it to be, while I'm dreaming, I take it to be true. I can make a mistake there. Who knows whether I'm not, whether I am or am not dreaming. Okay, so in Descartes' view of things, that's enough to reject the idea that it's common sense that I'm here. Well, maybe I'm not here. Maybe I'm in who knows where. Okay, now he kind of gets down to business here, and his next question in his search for truth here, his search to identify something truthful that cannot be rejected, that cannot be undermined. And this is, I say, the plot thickens here. This is where it gets really, really deep and really disturbing. He says, well, what about 1 + 1 = 2? That is the basics of mathematics or geometry. If I think 1 + 1 = 2, nothing that I think, nothing that in no way whatsoever can I think that that's not true. Okay, I mean, I could say one apple plus one apple might not be 2 apples, because you can say, well, maybe it's not an apple, maybe it's a grapefruit and things like that. But in terms of mathematics, it's abstract. It's just 1 + 1 = 2. Those symbols cannot be unthought. They cannot be criticized. They cannot be rejected. Or can they be? Okay, now here's where he kind of deepens the whole thing. He said, yes, he agrees that no matter how hard I try, I cannot see 1 + 1 = 4. It's impossible, and be a sane person. Obviously, someone who's whatever, on drugs or crazy can say 1 + 1 = 4. Okay, I mean, it can be said, but it cannot be thought by a rational person. Okay, as you can expect, Descartes has another consideration. Okay, this is what philosophers do. They consider things that most people, think, would rather not consider. Okay, so here's his consideration. Descartes says, well, I have heard that there's a God. Okay, and what if that God made me in such a way that I could not conceivably grasp what the real world is like? Okay, so getting into this a little bit. So the question is, what if God made me in a way that is basically fallible? What if God gives me a mind and eyes that are lenses or prisms that don't work very well? And then Descartes says, well, that's not what God is. And then he responds, that's not the question, but could it happen? Is it possible? And you have to, one has to agree that, yeah, maybe I live in like a carnivalesque universe where no matter how hard I try to grasp things and understand them, they're always wrong. Okay, the human mind is not made in a way to obtain adequate understanding. Okay, now that's not an impossible thought, and that undermines 1 + 1 = 2. 1 + 1 = 2, but how is that really so different from, I'm talking to Maria Sharapova's father in wherever, in Siberia? It's not at all. If anything, it's more, as far as I'm concerned, it's more likely that somehow or another that my mind has a flawed structure. Okay? So the conclusion that Descartes comes to, keeping it kind of simple here, is that until I know whether there's a God, number one. Number two, whether I know, until I know what the characteristics of God are. And number three, until I know what my purpose is in the universe, I really can't be sure of anything. Okay, now I want everyone to think about that for, whatever, a few minutes. And I will come back with the next video and to kind of wrap this up, okay? I'm rolling with my YouTubes now.